Welcome back to another episode of DEC Does What. I'm Sean Mahar along with
Erica Ringwald.
And we're laughing because we've just discovered that it's episode 20 of the podcast.
We have hardly believe it.
Me neither. 20 episodes down, Erica. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's also my 20th wedding anniversary this year.
Happy anniversary.
Yes, I'm old.
Oh, we are all old. That is for sure. Well, this past week, we just had some adventures here at DEC. I had the honor and privilege of testifying before the New York State Legislature on the governor's proposed budget this year.
And you knocked it out, boss.
Thanks to you and the team, Erica. I could not have accomplished it without all those multiple prep sessions and thousands of pages of prep documents that you all produced. So thank you so much for preparing me for it. One of the things in the hearing, we got to obviously plug the podcast. So first things first, to all the new listeners from the New York State Legislature who
welcome aboard.
Tuning in. Yes, thank you for joining us on this fun adventure of DEC Does What. Thank you again for the hearing. But one of the big topics that we heard about at this hearing is our new freshwater wetlands protection program in the state. So Erica, I know we've got some of our wetlands team members on to talk about that. Who do we have on?
We've got two folks from the Division of Fish and Wildlife team with us here today. J.R. Jacobson, a music aficionado. I'm just going to drop that right now.
Wow, that's some pressure.
Best slide decks ever. Habitat Protection Section Head in the Bureau of Ecosystem Health. And Krista Spohr, she is our Freshwater Wetlands Outreach Coordinator in the Bureau of Ecosystem Health. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you two on and talk about my favorite topic of all time, which is our freshwater wetlands. JR, I've known you for a lot of years now. You've been one of the most passionate people I know about our wetlands. So why don't we start off today? What are wetlands and why are they so important and why do we care about them here at the department?
Well, I've been working on wetlands since you said old before. I'd like to call it middle-aged, but okay. I've been working on wetlands since 1988 is when I first started as a seasonal fish and wildlife technician when we were working with wetland mapping. And so the importance of wetlands have been sort of in my psyche for a very, very long time. And for me, I'm a wildlife biologist, so the first thing that comes to mind on why wetlands are important is because they provide great habitat for a whole host of different animals. You know, I'm in the Division of Fish and Wildlife, and so my tail wags when we start talking about wildlife, and there's a whole host of wildlife that use, the wetlands as their habitat for various things. You know, you think about ducks. Everybody thinks, oh, what's a wetland look like? Oh, they have ducks in it. But there are so many more things that go from, those open water habitats all the way through things that are, have trees in them, so you can have wetlands that go that full span. And so, they provide habitat is probably the main reason why I got into this. But then as I got to learn more about it, then there were so many more benefits that, come to New Yorkers because of those wetlands. Everyone talks about, stormwater holding capacity. So in a changing climate, we all worry about how, we're going to handle those increased storm flows, and wetlands do a great job at, holding that water so that they protect, landowners and their various infrastructure things there. So my tail wags for that too.
So, okay, you're talking about tail wagging. Now, listeners can't see, but you are wearing a tie that has salamanders on it, and salamanders do have tails. Now, do salamander tails wag, and do salamanders get excited?
Well, I'm sure they get excited at something. I would think they're excited because the department now is protecting their habitats. How's that for a little?
That's great. I like that.
And so, in our new statute, vernal pools are a thing that we really haven't regulated and protected much in the past. And so that's a huge thing for the salamanders and for us too.
What are vernal pools?
Thank you, Krista. You beat me to it.
They're wetland.
Oh, this is going to be like a Grill JR episode. Even the guests are asking you questions.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Krista.
That's the appropriate answer, JR.
And so vernal pools are small wetlands that are isolated from other ones. They tend to be really great providing habitat for salamanders and frogs and other things that use them for breeding. But they only spend a small portion of their time in that vernal pool to breed, lay eggs, that sort of thing. And then they spend most of the time in upland areas surrounding those wetlands. And they can go as far as 2,000 feet from the actual vernal pool, which is amazing to me. And they spend most of their time up there. And so in the springtime. And we're almost to that stage now where folks are going to start looking in the breeding ponds, in those vernal pools, to find their egg masses and to see them. And sadly, we also do a lot of work seeing them cross roads and getting whacked by cars. But those vernal pools are wetlands, small wetlands, and then those amphibians and reptiles that use those are critical for their life history.
So crossing the roads, is that an amphibian road crossing project that Hudson River Estuary Program might run down there?
Best night of the year.
I believe it's the big night.
The big night, yes.
Biggest night of the year.
Can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Sure. So end of winter, beginning of spring, when the weather starts warming, amphibians start migrating from their vernal pools. And often they're crossing the road. So DEC, what we do every year, we sort of support and train volunteers across the state, but big focus on the Hudson Valley, to safely help move amphibians from one side of the road to the other so they are not the victims of vehicle collisions and they make it to their destinations. It's a super cool thing. Folks are out in the middle of the night helping protect wildlife, and we really encourage everyone to take part. Thousands of people do. Check out dec.ny.gov in the next several weeks to learn more and sign up.
And every year I do that, and I have for many, many years, nicely at my own house. I don't need to get out and do much because they actually are up on the upland in my property. Then they cross the road and go to a vernal pool on the other side of the road. So I can take my kids out in my pajamas and with boots and an umbrella and do that versus having to go and get in the car and drive places and so forth. So I just love it.
Me too. And that's where I actually got my start as an ecologist myself, doing wetlands and doing wetland research and going out in the springtime in vernal pools, watching frogs cross the road, figuring out breeding transects, where they're migrating to, how they're using these ponds. Started in the Saratoga battlefield, a really unique spot that has a lot of different wetlands complexes on that site. So it was a really cool research project that we could do. But now my family thinks I'm crazy because on that first warm, rainy night when no one wants to be outside, I'm headed out to the car. I'm driving with my windows down, listening for frogs, figuring out where the breeding pools are in my neighborhood, and just loving nature and the rebirth that comes. And frogs are like the birds, sort of the signs of spring, right? The rebirth of Earth is happening. And these are the places on the planet that are most important for their survival. And that's really what makes this work so important. So let's go down a little bit more into the regulations themselves. So how are wetlands doing in the state, and why do we need to put new protections in place?
Well, we've had a wetland protection law since 1975 that previously was predicated on making sure that wetlands that we regulate are mapped and shown on maps. And in 1975, in the early 80s, we did a great job at mapping all those things. And then wetlands have changed, and we recognize that we missed an awful lot of wetland. We've estimated we missed a million acres of wetland. In context, there's 1.2 million acres on our old maps. So, almost doubling, or we missed half of what we should have. And so that is what has been driving us to say, okay, the statute says we're supposed to protect these wetlands, and this Freshwater Wetlands Act, Article 24 of the Conservation Law, regulates the wetland that are greater than 12.4 acres, and always has. And with the new statutory changes that came in 2022, we still do. And so those larger wetlands is what we were supposed to regulate, but we missed an awful lot of those in the mapping. That's what drove the effort to change the statute to say, even if we were to map and change the maps, they're out of date by the time we were able to kind of get them through the regulatory process. And so we said, with the leadership of yourself and other folks in the governor's office and other places, that, let's try and do something. And that's what led to the changes in 2022 that then said, let's break the link between the maps and our regulation. Let's still regulate those larger wetlands, in the case of 12.4 acres, but also regulate some of the smaller wetlands. And those in the statute had 11 criteria that are designed to say, okay, to give clear guidance to everybody that what's regulated and what's not. And so those 11 criteria is what we've been working through with the new regulations to kind of clarify those. 11 seems like a big number. Half of those are pretty explicit in the law. We didn't need to do much in the regulations, but half, we did need to do a lot of work to clarify things. And so that's what the regulations were designed to do. They recently went live on January 1st of this year. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of work, as you know, work in trying to do that. But that's how we've regulated them in the past, and now we have a new system.
So as we adapt to that new system, obviously public education is going to be key. So Krista, talk to us about the outreach work that you're doing and how are we helping educate New Yorkers on the importance of wetlands and the new protection measures that we have in place?
I have done one webinar, a public webinar so far that was January 15th. And there is a definite interest in these new regulations because we broke DEC's record of attendance. There was 2,200 people on the line.
That's awesome.
Luckily, I just see a screen and myself, so it didn't make me too nervous.
No pressure.
No pressure.
There are 1 million people listening right now.
But can't see.
Or 4.
Yeah. Hi, Mom.
So there's more public webinars coming out next week. We have the Hudson River Estuary Program is doing one. A couple weeks later, the New York Planning Federation. And then we're running another one with DCE and DFW that is going to be targeted just to municipalities and code enforcement officers. There's also outreach going out on the ground. So the regions are awesome at helping me, like, hey, do you have anything going on in my region? So different ecologists and from BEH will go out to different planning board meetings and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's our social media. And then the webpage, that's where you get all your information. And eventually, lovely programs for like realtors I'm working on with the Sea Grant. They have one that they work with Vermont doing a realtor program for their state. And so they're helping me create one for our state.
So, Krista, why did you get involved in wetlands, or what brought you to this world, and what's your favorite wetland story for us?
Since working here, I discovered I have a vernal pool on my property where I
Awesome.
Yes, and so I always loved hearing the spring keepers, and so now I understand it more, and I go out there, and I'm not super great at botany yet, but I will get there.
Teach you a few tricks if you need.
Yeah.
Get me over anytime.
Yes, awesome. So what brought me to it is I started a journey with loving the environment and wildlife. Got my master's, or got undergrad zoology, master's in environmental management. But then I just took a turn towards yoga. My worldview was like, the world is so messed up. I got to help each person by slowing down, coming within and finding themselves, and then they'll feel their connection to nature. So I did that for a while, opened a yoga studio and did some outreach and worked with a nonprofit for Songwriting with Soldiers, an amazing organization that connected veterans and active duty to professional songwriters. So I saw the magic of connection. And so my path was very meandering, but it made me the perfect fit for this job. Like when it came up, my husband's friend was like, this job looks perfect for Krista. And COVID had happened, so I took a steer from the fitness world, from yoga. And I was like, I've been meaning to get back to it. And I was like, this looks really hard, but I am really interested.
Well, staying on that theme of yoga and flexibility, one of the things we are always doing is being flexible in the way that we implement our new regulations that are coming down the
That
pipe.
was a stretch.
Oh, yes, it was, Erica. But I think, JR, just to turn back to you for a second on flexibilities, one of the things we do, obviously, we set regulations. We have very specific, compliance mechanisms that are baked in there. But we also try and make it easier for facilitation of project reviews on the landscape. So I know we've got some general permits that are going out for comment. Can you explain how we're helping everyone adapt to these new regulations and how we're making it a workable program?
We recently released general permits that are a whole host of packages and a whole host of different sectors that are regulated. And that's, again, to provide those various sectors opportunities to move through the permitting process in an efficient manner. One that we have really highlighted is the use of community solar. With climate change and our need to reduce greenhouse gases, we recognize that solar is a major thing to meet CLCPA guidelines and everything else. And so, we've spent a lot of time working with the industry to come up with a draft permit to facilitate that work.
And really balance that need to protect our wetlands and facilitate that development. And that's something that's really important.
And that balancing follows through with all of those general permits, because there's an awful lot of things that can be done. We regulate that wetland in that 100-foot adjacent area. And, there's a lot of projects that we can, move through. Before the change, we were reviewing about 1,300 freshwater wetland permit applications in a year. With the new changes, we're going to anticipate more of that. But that was just permits. So, just because something's regulated doesn't mean it can't be done. But there's a regulatory process that tries to avoid and minimize and then, if need be, mitigate any kind of impacts that might be on those wetlands from those projects. And the vast majority of things we regulate or we permit are pretty minor. They're things that, somebody wants to put an addition on their house, a deck on their house. These are things, if they're within 100 feet, they need a permit. But it's really not a big deal. We want to make sure they do it in the right way, but it's an easy permit. So, those permits allow for those easy things. And our new permits actually go a little bit further than even some of the really simple projects where we're recognizing this workload, and we've included, mitigation requirements on some of those. We have one of the general permits looks to, multifamily dwellings, subdivisions, those kind of things, because we've been working with the industry to kind of craft that as well. And so we've been really trying to strike that balance that's required in the statute, and just seems like the right thing to do anyway.
With a lot of our regulatory packages, we really try to engage stakeholders, affected entities, the general public in kind of our process, right? To sort of walk them through it. And in the case of the new wetlands law, we did it what we call an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. Can you share a little bit about that process of sort of outreach and engagement before as we're sort of fine-tuning what the regulations are going to be?
Yeah, of course. So the advance notice of proposed rulemaking was I think, a great way to get a proposal out, to get thoughts in that process. We had asked a bunch of questions of the regulated community to say, hey, we're contemplating some things here. What do you think? We really are looking for your input so that we can make this a better proposal. And as part of that process, we said, okay, let's get that. We got Krista, I forget the exact number of comments we got, but there's
about 3,000.
And so in those, we had a lot of good comments, pithy comments, I call them, we can then improve the proposal. And that led into the actual notice of proposed rulemaking. And so that gave us the opportunity to say, thank you for the thoughts. Now here's the formal proposal, and then another opportunity for the public to chime in and give us their thoughts.
Can you share an example of something that was an issue or a challenge that, an affected entity raised that we addressed, that we recognized and addressed in in the draft, like a GP or?
One of the things is that there was interest in vernal pools. We were talking about the vernal pools.
Yep.
And a lot of people, I use that tail wagging sort of analogy, but the environmental community and a lot of folks were very interested in vernal pools because New York had not done much with vernal pools before. And so everybody was pretty excited about it. And there were a lot of comments on, well, we should go further. We should keep going more. And what we had contemplated with that is because of this upland requirement of these amphibians that are, using these. And the statute actually says we protect these for amphibian breeding. We said, oh, well, in Article 24, the Wetlands Law, since 75, we've had the ability to extend the adjacent area. So that I mentioned there's that 100-foot regulated area. And then we have had the statutory ability or legal ability to extend those. So a lot of people made comments and said, well, this seems like the perfect reason to extend some adjacent areas for these vernal pools. And so we took that, we looked at the research, we said, okay, how can we do that? And then we said, okay, the research was really pointing to a particular distance, and a large distance. It was 800 feet was what we put into the notice of proposed rulemaking, so the initial thing. So that was an example of something that we had gotten good comment on, and then we changed it. Looking at the final, we got more feedback and saying, okay, well, the environmental community was very happy it was in there. But a lot of other folks said, well, that may not make perfect sense if, depending on the individual place where we're going to extend that adjacent area. So in some cases, if you have a vernal pool in the middle of the woods, all the habitat around it is probably, valuable. If you have a vernal pool that's, say, near a farm field or near habitat that isn't really key for those amphibians, their upland requirements, then maybe you don't need to, extend the adjacent area in that side versus the other. And we had initially we had thought about those things when we were, proposing the 800 foot. We said, well, we'll work that out in the permitting. Based on the comment, we said, no, let's try and make this a site-specific determination. Honestly, it's a little more work for everybody because now we have to figure out when a proposal comes in, where are we going to extend it to the east or the west, and all the details that go into that. But that's in the notice of adoption, the final regulations. We had changed that to say, yeah, let's do it on a site-specific basis.
And really let science be our guide, right, on the field.
Yep.
That's what jurisdictional determinations are all about, really seeing what the ecology of a locality or local project has, and then really adapting our regulations to meet that dual need of recognizing what needs to happen on a site, but also what needs to be protected on that site. So one of the questions I got at the hearing a lot was lakes. Are lakes wetlands, and how do these new regulations apply to some lake-wide landowners, and what should they expect?
So in the old system, we had to map the wetlands that we regulate. And we mapped some areas of lakes, but not all. The statute has always said that, one of the types of wetlands are submergent vegetation, so things that are in lakes. And it's said that since 1975, but we didn't map it completely, or we didn't map it consistently because they're really difficult to know remotely where the extent of those areas are. And so, now with the new statute not being tied to the maps, a lot of folks have questions, and legitimate questions, about how is that going to be implemented and so forth. And so we are going to regulate wetlands or submerged wetlands in lakes that are greater than 12.4 acres, or if they meet one of those unusual importance criteria. It's a really tough challenge for us when we're doing our jurisdictional determinations to see these things, because you can't see them all the time from an air photograph. Folks know there's weeds in their lakes, and pretty much every lake has some vegetation in it that we'll call weeds or wetland plants or whatever you want to call it. The challenge for us will be to make those determinations on a case-by-case basis. We know some lakes clearly have been managing their emergent or the submergent vegetation for years. Those are likely going to be regulated. It's the other lakes that are going to be challenging for us. And, what we've told folks is, certain activities are exempt. So there are many activities, maintenance of existing structures, as far as docks and putting docks in and out every year, that's just an unregulated, it's exempt activity. But new docks will need permits. Vegetation management, will need new permits. So that's a challenge for us. One of the general permits that we've been working on is to address invasive species management in these lakes that are regulated. So we're trying to find an easy path to manage, this vegetation that we can all agree to is ecologically a problem. And so how do we find an easy way to do that? And the general permits are one of those ways.
What would you say is the most frequently asked question you get about how we're implementing the new law?
A question we get a lot is, do I have to add the 100 feet to the informational maps, and a lot of questions regarding the maps. And if you went on the environmental resource mapper, we have previously mapped wetlands, and that's a green layer, and those are regulatory maps. So those for RRO maps. Now there's a new layer that is called informational freshwater wetlands, and that's a pink-purple layer. So because we are switching gears and going from the maps is where you will go, the maps is what people would first rely on to see if they had jurisdictional wetlands on their property. Now we created the informational maps just so there's a little bit of guidance there, but it's not the end all be all. So we're really want to remind people, okay, look at what are you planning to do? Are you looking to do a project and somewhere in the future, and you just want to get an idea of what you're going to be handling, maybe if you have some regulated wetlands in your property? Well, then go to the informational maps, look to see if you're anywhere near either the green or the pink layer, and then you can get an idea. If your project is coming up, like if you're already planning to start your project and you're in the throes of it, then now we are shifting gears to a jurisdictional determination would come from your region, but now we're doing those remotely. So now you would go to the website and you would submit a jurisdictional determination request form. And so that will get you that determination of whether or not you have wetlands on your property, but also the classification of what those wetlands are.
Because the statute requires us to classify wetlands and we do it between 1 and 4, 1 having the most benefits and 4 having fewer benefits. And that feeds into the permitting process. And that classification used to be done in the maps, but now we don't have that luxury. So now we have to do it as part of that jurisdictional determination process that Krista talked about.
I like to remind people, because there's a lot of anxiety around losing these maps as the end-all be-all, would you want to go back to driving around with a paper map in your car? Like, this is the way technology has progressed. And so in order to do the best job we can and protect the wetlands the best that we can, we have to evolve with the times.
Yep.
Definitely.
Because when these maps were created, because you mentioned the musical part of me.
Yes.
Kool and the Gang, my favorite group, was the bomb. They were the ones. So when we were producing these maps, Kool and the Gang.
What is your favorite Kool and the Gang song?
Well, I'd have to say Celebrate, because everyone's heard that in every single wedding they've been to. It's a little overused, I get it.
A little?
What? Well, I don't think I could ever hear it too many times, but anyway.
So, Krista, it's your 2-year anniversary now with DEC. So you told us, happy anniversary. Honored to have you on our show and celebrate your anniversary here. But,
Thank you.
I think you talked about how you came to DEC, but what has made you stick around, and what do you like about this agency so far, being here 2 years?
I really like the people. A really great team here. And I just really like communicating with the public of why the environment is important and, making that connection. And yes, it can be tough because it's a lot of change, but I really feel like I'm helping make a difference for Mama Earth, and I like that.
Definitely, we appreciate you being on the team and doing that.
On the other hand, JR has been here for 33 years. Did I read that right?
Yeah. I started when I was 3.
Holy smokes.
And I come into work every day. Okay. Most every day. And
We do have telecommuting here at DEC.
I'm pretty jazzed about coming in, to, as Krista said, to work with folks, and to also, this mission of this agency has been amazing. That's, I've been here for a long time, and it truly is a wonder. And I'm so glad I get to talk on this today.
So, all right, lightning round. Not really lightning round, but I have to know. Favorite wetland frog species? JR, you go first.
That's a tough one because
New York species.
Only because I see them almost not every day, but very frequently in my yard. Wood frogs.
Wood frogs?
Yeah.
Okay. Krista?
Spring peeper.
Spring peeper. Erica?
I'm also a fan of the spring peeper.
All right, see. I'd go wood frog just because they are the explosive breeder, right? You can only hear them for like a week at a time, and that's it. And if you miss them, you miss them, and then you can go count their egg masses. But I like a green frog. They're a little bigger. I like their song. And it's just, yep. And everyone thinks it's a bullfrog, but it's actually a green frog.
The one thing that I had this distinct recollection when I used to do a lot of field work. So, our folks do a lot of field work. We do delineations. We go out in wetlands. And, one point I flushed an American woodcock and I went back and saw the nest. It was really cool. And they tend to nest in wetlands, in forested wetlands. But they also have this cool springtime courtship display. I don't know if folks have seen this, but it is cool. And so what they do is they go out into old fields, kind of open areas, and then they do what they call painting. And I'll demonstrate because it's kind of fun. But what they do is they go, neat, and they kind of dance around in these open fields. Neat, neat. And so these birds, they get themselves worked up into a Z, and then they jump. And then they go up, and they go 300 feet up into the air. They make these big circles, and you can kind of hear their wing beats.
Awesome.
And then when they start to come down, and they do this, and then they drop almost in the same spot where they took off, and they start painting again. Neat, neat. And the fun part is, and I've done this with my kids, I've done this with my father, even took my father to do this. Each time they go up, you can get a little closer. You get a little closer. And then you squat down, and you just lay there really still, because if you move, then they fly off. But then they come down and they do the painting. And when they get really, really close, it's not just a neat, you can hear the air going into them and then neat going out. And I remember, this is my time on Long Island that's where I grew up, but that having been out on state property on a Friday night, this bird was behind me. And I couldn't move. And it is really close. I wanted so bad to kind of look at it, and I couldn't. And then neat, and then it flew off. And I went, oh, I'll just turn over. And then it flew somewhere else, 30 yards away. Close, but not close enough. And just doing that is so cool. And there's a species that is wetland dependent, but not for everything. And they're up, where they're doing the painting, they do it in wetlands, but they also do it in uplands as well. And so there's something that's a common species. It's not rare, but without those wetlands to provide habitat for their nesting, they wouldn't be around.
So JR, your story made me remember one of my stories about being out in the battlefield, middle of the night, because you're doing frog research in the middle of the night after sun goes down. And I'm like thigh deep in this mucky swamp, like walking around. I'm hearing frogs all over the place. And then just to the right of me, I hear like an engine starting up. It was like, and it was a ruffed grouse. I learned after the fact. But I was freaked out because I'm in the battlefield. People talk about ghosts, and you hear this like crazy noise of like something you don't expect. So my partner and I, we just hightailed it out of the swamp. I don't think either of us moved as fast through the muck as we ever did because we were totally freaked out. And I went back to my professor the next day and described it. He's like, oh yeah, it's a ruffed grouse. And they're just, drumming, because you think birds, chirping or painting. But this is like them flapping their wings. And it sounded just like an engine starting in the middle of the woods. And it was a freaky experience, but awesome. And we always encourage people to obviously get offline, get outside, especially in the springtime coming up. It is the rebirth of Mother Earth, as you said it, and it's a great opportunity just to really see how important these wetlands are and feel it. So thanks for being on the show. Great episode on wetlands. Listeners, please do check out dec.ny.gov for more of our information on all the general permits, the regulations themselves, why wetlands are awesome and important. You can find Krista and JR's contact information there, and you can geek out with them anytime, because I know they love talking about wetlands so much. So thanks you two for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Erica, it is still winter. I know we talked a lot about spring and, frogs coming back out, wetlands coming back to life, but it is still an amazing opportunity to get outside in New York State in the wintertime. What are we offering ice fishers this time of year?
Well, coming up, this is a great time of year to try out ice fishing or get back out on the ice to do some ice fishing. And we've got a free fishing weekend coming up. I believe that's President's Day weekend. Saturday, February 15th and Sunday, February 16th. So you could also make it a Valentine's date. Our designated free fishing days, they allow anyone to get out and fish without a license in New York State. All other rules and regs do apply, but check out our website for safety guidelines, and always, always, always make sure the ice is thick enough to be safe.
definitely. And I guess I now have my little Valentine's Day treat to take my wife on.
There you go. I'm sure she's going to love it.
Yes, she is. But speaking of ice, Erica, I saw last week or the other week an amazing thing that our forest ranger.
Did anybody not see it?
I don't know. Why don't you tell our listeners what they missed?
Some of our folks saw a moose that had fallen through the ice on Lake Abenaki. This is up in Hamilton County in New York's North Country. And our forest rangers and NCON officers figured out a way to help guide the moose out of the ice. They got out there in their cold water suits, challenging rescue mission, and the moose got out.
It was an amazing
It was
video.
incredible. So check out the video on our website.
But Erica, it seems like not only the free fishing weekend is a great opportunity to get outside, but what else is happening in February that listeners should be aware of?
Well, also, President's Day weekend is our annual Camp Santanoni winter weekend. This is an incredible time to get outside, enjoy winter recreation, whatever your interest may be, for some exclusive winter access to the preserved buildings of one of the former great camps in the Adirondacks, Camp Santanoni. No reservation required and no cost involved. And if you can't make it President's Day weekend, because maybe you are ice fishing with your Valentine, we'll be doing it again the weekend of March 15th and 16th.
Awesome. It is a really cool facility up there. A great opportunity to get out and enjoy nature and check out some of the rich natural history and history that we have here at the department as well.
Yes.
Well, Erica, that does bring us to the end of season 2.
I have many feelings.
Me too. Other than excitement for season 3. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. So we're going to take a week or two off, just get our episodes lined up for season 3 coming up. Look forward to, continuing to deliver to you all the news and information that you need on what makes us the best state agency in state government and one of the best in the nation for environmental protection. And it's been an honor to do 20 episodes with you, Erica. And
right back at you.
See you rise to this occasion that I threw you in of this podcast. But it's been an awesome opportunity, and please keep emailing us at contact@dec.ny.gov. Let us know more of what you want to hear as we plan for season 3. But in addition to thanks for tuning in, Erica, what can everyone do?
Get outside.
DEC Does What is a production of DEC's Division of Communication, Education, and Engagement. Our theme music is an original composition by Mike Menza, Environmental Program Specialist with DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife. Like what you heard on this episode? Please leave a review and share this episode with others. Want to learn more about DEC's wide-ranging efforts to protect New Yorkers and the environment? Visit dec.ny.gov or connect with us on social media. You can find us using @NYSDEC. For more information on DEC Does What, visit dec.ny.gov/podcast.